So Sony finally revealed their $700 PS5 Pro on Tuesday, but there's more to the story than just the price tag. I have returned to my rightful home on Sunday, so let's make it sensational. I'm Mike, and I'm back to talk about the gaming news. And of course, the biggest story was Sony revealing the $700 PS5 Pro, which releases on November 7th. I released a video on Tuesday when it was announced to give a breakdown of what they're offering with the PS5 Pro and my thoughts on it, and that will be linked above somewhere. Is it over here? I can't remember. But of course, there's more news about the console after the initial announcement, and one of those things was something I mentioned in that video. So one of the things I speculated about was the reason that Sony picked this price for the PS5 Pro, which is that they had no real competition in this performance bracket because Microsoft already said they're not doing a mid-gen refresh. Well, analyst Piers Harding-Rolls, I really hope I said that right, is basically saying the same thing. He basically said that because Sony doesn't have competition in this performance class this generation, there was no reason for them to try to undercut Microsoft with the price, considering that Microsoft doesn't have anything that's on par performance-wise. And this makes a lot of sense. I remember before the PS5 price was announced, there were a lot of rumors that Sony and Microsoft were basically playing chicken with each other and waiting to see who was going to announce their price first, because neither one wanted to be above the other, which is why the Xbox Series X and the disc-based PS5 both ended up being $500, and both Microsoft and Sony sold those consoles for a loss. But now, there's no reason for Sony to worry about the price because, again, there's no competition. But let's just put the PS5 Pro and the price aside for a moment, because before Sony announced the PS5 Pro, they quietly increased the price of their DualSense controllers. So this price increase is worldwide. Previously, when they raised the price of the console, it was only in certain regions, but the DualSense is going up by $5 basically everywhere. So the standard controller is $75 now, and the controllers with the metallic colors and finishes like the volcanic red are $80. So it looks like even if you don't get the PS5 Pro, you still get to participate in some pro pricing. To be honest, I didn't even notice this happened. When I recorded the video about the PS5 Pro, I was focused on that and I just completely missed it, which is fair because the controller wasn't the accessory that everyone's been focusing on. Apparently the removable disc drive is. So the PS5 Pro, which is $700, but that is without the disc drive. If you want the disc drive, that's an additional $80, and apparently a lot of people want the drive. So after the PS5 Pro was announced, there was a rush to buy the disc drive add-on, which people will need if they want to be able to play discs on the PS5 Pro. And it got to the point where it started selling out at multiple retailers, and now there's a risk of them being scalped. If I had to guess, they probably just didn't have a lot of these drives to begin with, and they probably weren't selling that well before. Because I imagine like most people probably just get the PS5 with the disc drive because it's only $50 more than the digital one. So the PS5 Pro is probably the first time since they launched the Slim with the detachable disc drive last year that the drive itself has been bought in mass quantities. So I don't think it's the case where the PS5 Pro is so popular that they bought millions of drives. I think that they probably just didn't have a lot available to begin with. But if you're getting a PS5 Pro, there's still a couple of months before it launches. So if you want the drive, I would just wait till it's back in stock. It would be insane to pay an inflated price for a disc drive for a system that's already $700. Let's not do that. Just like someone should have told Microsoft, let's not do that when they announced another mass layoff. So Microsoft is laying off 650 people from their gaming division. This came out from an internal memo that Phil Spencer sent to staff that was then leaked to The Verge. According to the memo, the affected jobs are corporate and supporting functions that are being cut because of redundancy. Basically, they're claiming that they were overlapping positions from their purchase of Activision last year that they wanted to get rid of. The memo goes on to say that no games, devices, or experiences are being canceled and no studios are being closed, which of course they're going to say that because when they did layoffs 4 months ago, they closed studios and canceled games. So it's kind of like them saying, well, it's bad, but it's not as bad as last time where we closed studios. Of course, the biggest story from the previous round of layoffs was them closing Hi-Fi Rush creator Tango Gameworks, which ended up being saved when they were recently purchased by Krafton. I've mentioned this every time that this has happened this year, but this is probably not going to be the last announcement of mass layoffs. It's just been an ongoing thing around the gaming industry. Except in this one case when it comes to Annapurna Interactive, where their whole video game team just walked out. So Annapurna Interactive has published several popular games like Outer Wilds, Stray, and What Remains of Edith Finch, but basically they provide QA and publishing services for other game companies. But Annapurna as a whole does more than just games. They have Annapurna Pictures that does TV and movies. Well, apparently the president of the game publishing side, Nathan Gary, was negotiating with Annapurna Pictures to spin off the gaming part into its own company. The negotiation fell through, so Gary and the entire publishing team, which is 25 people, walked out. So Annapurna put out a statement saying they're still going to honor all the publishing contracts they had. And then people's concerns shifted to Remedy, the creators of Alan Wake and Control, because they had recently signed a contract with Annapurna. So they put out a statement basically saying that the contract was for Annapurna Pictures for movie and TV shows related to Control and Alan Wake, and that they were self-publishing Control too, so basically they're not affected by this. Now, it's not really clear from these articles that I've read what led up to the walkout in these negotiations. It's possible that the people who were at Annapurna Interactive could go off and form their own publishing company, or maybe they'll start negotiations again, especially because Annapurna still has games to publish, and it'll be a major setback to have to hire a whole new publishing team. Alright, so after those last two stories, I feel like we gotta end on something not necessarily positive, but at least not related to people losing their jobs. So let's talk about Meta's upcoming headset. In a final story. So I know in our first story we talked about the prices of Sony's accessories going up and the price of the PS5 Pro, but Meta, formerly known as Facebook, also increased the price of the Quest 2 and then launched the Quest 3 at $500, which in the VR space is still considered budget, but it's not nearly as cheap as the Quest 2 was at launch. So it's rumored that they're working on a budget version of the Quest 3 named the Quest 3S, and by rumored I mean they accidentally leaked a picture of it already. So Meta accidentally put an image of the Quest 3S in their link software for Windows, and of course people noticed it and it got out before it was removed. I feel like these type of leaks have been happening a lot lately, especially with the two Sony ones recently. I'm starting to feel like this may be intentional to drum up interest in their product. Anyway, aside from the actual leak, it's rumored that it's going to launch at $300 and it may not come with controllers and use gestures instead to control the headset, which I have the Quest 3 and the gesture control. It can work sometimes. I mean, personally, I wouldn't launch a Quest headset specifically with just the gesture controls. Obviously, they would probably have the controllers for sale separately for people who want them. And trust me, you're probably going to want them. It would also limit the games you can play without having controllers. And aside from that, I'm not sure what else they're changing to make it cheaper. Like, obviously, the cameras on the front are different, but are they going to be lower quality than the Quest 3? Or is it going to be a slightly slower processor? But Meta is having an event on the 25th, so I guess we'll find out then. But let me know in the comments how you feel about today's stories. Are you interested in the PS5 Pro at all? Or are you interested in this cheaper Meta Quest 3? Again, let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure, tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button thing to be notified when I drop a video or a live stream. And always do at least 2 things at the same time.